Okay, final presentation. I made a t-shirt quilt. Oh, slides won't change. Background. So first, just my aesthetics and inspirations. So as you guys know, the aesthetic on the left is like that old school athletics type university varsity feel, which I did for my cycle project. That one in the middle is my personal aesthetic of like the comfy cozy, like you're in a blanket, you're doing relaxing activity, maybe it's raining outside. And so for this project, I kind of combined the two aesthetics for this t-shirt quilt. So it has specifically t-shirt panels from a university on it. So there's your university feel, and obviously I kind of try to paint the picture of like, maybe you're sitting at home and you're watching a football game and you're underneath this blanket. So you're both A, comfortable, and B, participating in like an athletic university event. And that's kind of my combined aesthetic. So as I said, this is my project. I decided to make a t-shirt quilt. This image in front of you is just all the t-shirts specifically that went into the quilt that are from my sister. So I originally started this project in 2018 when my sister graduated from college, and she gave me all these t-shirts and asked me to make her a quilt. And I started one summer with a plan, which is not on the next slide. And then decided to pick up the project for this class, and had a really fun time with it. So first, just my supplies. Obviously the t-shirt, measuring tape, scissors, pins and needles. Stuff I ended up purchasing is interfacing, which is in the photo on the bottom right of this slide, which is just, this ends up going on the back side of all of the t-shirt panels and is iron on. It's a heat activated like adhesive on one side, so that this prevents like rips and tears, and it helps to keep a uniform feel for all the t-shirts. And then one of the biggest things actually is that the t-shirts don't stretch anymore. So, you know, a regular cotton t-shirt is pretty elastic and stretchy, which is nice when you're wearing it, but when you're trying to sew with that type of material, it's really annoying. So that's kind of like the main reason that the interfacing is ironed onto the back. The next thing I had to purchase was batting. And that image on the top right is what it is. So it's kind of like a woven cotton that just goes between your front fabric and your back fabric, and just adds like a thickness and a weight to the quilt, so it feels more like a blanket and less like a sheet, basically. It's really helpful in just adding comfort. And then I have my backside / filler fabric. I'm actually going to go back a slide. So all those blank spaces in between, this on the outside and these ones in here, I planned on filling with another fabric. My sister choose. So this image here was the fabric I ended up going with. This I used on the entire backside, as well as filling that space on the front side. And then I bought red thread, which is just what I used to sew the entire thing with. And then finally, I put in several hours at the Idea Forge using their sewing machine and iron and ironing board. I do own my own sewing machine, but day one when I started this project, I realized it was crap. So I went to the Idea Forge to use theirs instead, and nobody was using it, so it worked out. So here's a little bit of the process. So first I determined the pattern and the layout that I wanted. So this image on the left is actually the layout I created in the summer of 2018. Just with all the t-shirts, I was going for, you know, symmetry, trying to match. You can see that some of the t-shirts she had two of, so I kind of mirrored them on either side. Tried to balance the colors a little bit with those few white t-shirts and the yellow t-shirts, since the overwhelming color is red. And then she had four of those. You can see the little squares in each corner, kind of cut off on the bottom, but on the top you can see she had four of those. So I decided to just keep that as my like little corner pieces. And then the image on the right is just the overall dimensioning of each panel, which I didn't realize how much that helped me out. Not having to do that again saved me a bunch of time, because then I could just take the t-shirts and immediately start like measuring the front side to cut them out, which is the next step. I just used my tape measure. I left a 1/2 inch border for seam allowance. So the dimensions I ended up using for the rectangle was an inch greater than what I had planned so that I could leave that 1/2 inch seam allowance. That image on the right is actually once I had finally cut out all the t-shirts to their proper size plus an inch and laid them out. That's how it ended up looking, which I was really pleased with, even though my cutting wasn't always the best job. It still worked out. So the next step after that is to iron on the interfacing. That comes in a roll actually, so I even had to cut all of those pieces out. And I was doing some research and they recommend making like the interfacing slightly smaller than the actual size of your t-shirt panel, just so you don't like get glue on your ironing board. It can ruin it. Which my parents actually were here one weekend and they helped me cut a bunch of these out. And when I told them to make it slightly smaller, they took that to heart and made a lot of the pieces way too small, which ended up biting me later on in the project. But like I said, it still worked out, so it's okay. This is actually a much longer process than I thought. It took me like an entire day one Sunday to iron all of this on because you have to leave the iron in each spot for like 20 or so seconds and then move it like kind of overlapping. So each shirt was taking me like a couple minutes. Doesn't sound like a lot, but there were like, I don't know, 20, 30 t-shirts. And for some reason it took me hours, but I know Professor Hertzberg always says, you know, calculate 7 times longer than you think. And I thought this was going to take me like an hour. So it worked out that was the case. Okay, so the next step, once I had all my panels with their interfacing on the back, I could start sewing them together. So my method for this was like sewing my columns. So there's like 3 main columns, which is, you can see my mouse, there's this left one, which is actually the one shown in these pictures on the left and the right. And then this middle one minus these top 2, or the top one and the bottom one, and then this right one. So I sewed those 3 panels together. And then each strip. So this strip was one, this one, bottom, top, side, side. So that was kind of my method for getting individual panels. And then I put them all together. And so this one on the right, this image on the right shows just the front side of the quilt after everything's sewed together. So that's one solid piece. Started to become a huge pain and I was trying to get that under the sewing machine and I had all this extra fabric flowing around. But the way you do this is you just take the 2 front faces and you lay them together and then you sew the edge that you want to be together. And then when you open them up, you can't see the seam and they're all in the right orientation. It's pretty simple, but again, very long, multiple days. Step 5 is to then, so once you have the whole front side, you sew the front side to the batting to the back side in this like 3 layers. So I actually had to first make the back side because the way that fabric, that little red patch fabric comes, it comes in a roll that was like 2 yards wide. So I had to make 2 pieces of it, sew that together to get my backside. And then I laid that flat, smoothed the batting over it, which came in 1 sheet, luckily, so I didn't have to try to like piece that together. And then the front side on top. And then I probably put like 50 pins into this to get all 3 layers to stay where I wanted, which was super annoying, but really helpful that it wasn't sliding around and it helped me to like maintain. I left about a 2-inch border from the backside to help me to keep that centered. So I just sewed all the way around the border, one big thing about a 1/2 inch away again for that seam allowance. And then I sewed in the middle so that the batting wouldn't like bunch up or shift in the middle. So I kind of followed these long seams down the center so that I wasn't making new seams, although you would see them on the back side, you would see the stitch line because that was one solid piece. But on the front side, you wouldn't be able to tell. So that image in the middle is me picking one of those seams and following it along. Again, this was even harder because now I had 3 layers and the whole front side area to work with. So I kept having to like fold the quilt over a bunch just so I could get at this one seam. But this image on the right is it fully sewn together, one piece with the outside trimmed a little bit. One thing I've yet to do because I kind of ran out of time before this was due, but was just to make that border. So eventually I will flip that little white edge over so that it'll be that red pattern on the back and it won't be so misshapen, and you know, it's not even all the way around, but it will be once I do this. Yeah, that's my very last step. And then I would have a quilt. But I want to walk you guys through some of my mistakes because they were super annoying. So this one on the left, I sewed it upside down on accident. That was actually pretty easy to fix. I just like went through and ripped the seam and turned it around and then sewed it properly, but I thought it was kind of funny. This one in the middle was a little more annoying. So I actually made, if you look on the picture on the right, this is that top strip. I made it too long somehow. I made these little patches about an inch too long, both of them. So I had to like rip this seam and then cut off an inch for each and then resew it. And then when I ended up sewing it to the full fabric, it was somehow too short. So I had now shifted it over. So I then had to rip this entire seam again and then try to like bunch up my fabric and stretch the other ones so that the lines would line up. Which ended up with, you can probably see it a little bit on the right, but it kind of ripples a little bit and doesn't lie super flat. It's not super obvious, and obviously when you're in a blanket, the whole thing is like bunched up. But I thought it would look way better to have the seams and the lines line up than it would to have a few ripples. So that was something annoying that I had to deal with. And then the last one, I put something upside down again, and I just decided to leave it because I was at my wit's end by the time I had made it here. This was the very last thing I did before sewing all 3 layers together. And I thought, like, depending on the orientation of the blanket, you could then read the top or the bottom. So I thought maybe it was an okay mistake. So I left it. But yeah, because ripping that whole thing, that whole seam, and then flipping it back over was going to be obnoxious. So I just left it. So I know you guys saw in my design preview, my original project timeline was very rainbow and nice. A few days here, several days here, everything went in order. This is how it actually went, how I actually spent my time. I bought materials throughout. You can see I bought one in the early April, and then like mid-April, I bought more things. I was really on top of it at the beginning. I measured and cut out all the shirts in a couple days. And then I started to cut out the interfacing the next day. And then I took like a week-long hiatus before cutting out more interfacing. Again, a few more days, ironed it all on. Then I was really realizing that I was really running out of time. So I sewed everything together in like a 4-day, 10 hours a day in the Idea Forge stint. It was very tiring, but we got it done. Again, 1 day to sew all the other stuff together, and then the finishing touches. So this is the final product. There it is on my bed. It nicely fits a queen size bed, which is cool. My sister is like 5'11", and you know, she's tall, so it's nice that this is large and fits a queen size bed, so she can like fully get under it. There it is, nicely displayed on my couch. Because I thought that looked really nice. This is my comfy cozy and university aesthetic. So picture yourself sitting there like yelling at a game or something. And this is me trying it out. Super comfortable, soft, good size, really exactly what I wanted. I'm pretty happy with it. So there we go. That's the end.
Awesome.